There is one day to go in this Ashes series. It's almost over, and Australia is on the verge of winning this series 4-1. Still a fighting chance for England, but it seems unlikely. They are 8 for 302 in their second innings, leading by 119, 2 wickets in hand. Jacob Bethell, who made his maiden Test century, his maiden first-class century today, batted beautifully. He's still there in the middle. Matt Potts there as well, but pretty remote chance for England with no rain expected on day 5. Craddock, an eventful day's play. It's been an undulating Test match. Been plenty of storylines within. What have you made of today's play?
Well, let's start with Bethell. Honestly, a century like that, his first-class century was astounding. I've got to say this, Dan. I actually fear for the kid a bit because he's suddenly the wonder boy. You're reading all these tweets about this is what the future's got to be modelled on, and it's his first-class century. Gorgeous technique, loved it, commanding defence, nice array of shots, but man oh man, he's going to be the new wonder boy, and he's still learning the game.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why they've sort of picked him despite the fact that he hadn't done it really at professional cricket at all. And in fact, he had only made one professional cricket century prior to today. That came in a one-day international in I think, September against South Africa. So he'd been picked for a lot of international cricket before ever making a century as effectively a specialist batsman. I know he can bowl some reasonable spin. But yeah, there is going to be enormous pressure. I mean, he does have the technique, but he's in a generation where, as you know, I suppose the cautionary tale is on Australia's side, Cameron Green. Another wonderkind who actually had done more at first class level before he made his Test debut. But juggling formats, as Bethell has already had to do, and we've seen that with Green, those are the pitfalls. But no, look, it was a fantastic platform. Obviously begs the question, should have they picked him earlier in the series given how poorly Ollie Pope has performed? But I think it was justifiable to pick Pope at the start of the series. Pope had batted well in the lead up, did well in the tour match, and Bethell hadn't. You know, he had not really fired a shot in those one days in New Zealand, which was his sort of chance to usurp Pope. Just didn't do it. And to Bethell's credit, he acknowledged in his post-play press conference that the selectors did the right thing. Did you like that as well, Crash?
Yeah, he said I just wasn't batting that well early in the series. Gave me a chance to work it, and now I am. So it was good, but once again, it was a tease from England. You know, they're just over 100 runs in front. If it had been 170, it's a game. And they won one Test, and they were cheeky in the other 4. There were times, but they just couldn't ride the rhythms of a game, Dan. No. They couldn't hold on to the flapping canopy and said, "Oh, when this settles, I'm after you." You know, and it's a series of what might have been for them. You know.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you look at today. Look, the wicket was starting to play up, starting to turn, which I suppose begs the question whether Australia should have picked a frontline spinner, or England should have picked a frontline spinner. Don't forget them, and you know they're not going. If they're defending 150, 160 tomorrow, they're not going to have a frontline spinner to call upon. They're going to be relying on Will Jacks, maybe Joe Root and Bethell. But maybe the ends justify the means for Australia, given that Beau Webster's ended up taking 3 wickets. But you look at today, Beau Webster, he doesn't even bowl off spin in first-class cricket anymore. You know, that's his second. He gave up off spin. He was so modest he was at the craft to take up medium pace, and that's what really turned around his career. You know, he had Travis Head bowling for an extended period. He had Marnus Labuschagne bowling his ridiculous 125-kilometre-an-hour bounces. I know he'd got the wicket in the first innings, and then they're getting run-outs off that. It's just, you know, England will look back at this series and think, as you touched on, what if? I mean, we've gone through this several times, but so many openings, both within matches, both as a series, as a macro, when you consider the Cummins storyline, consider Josh Hazlewood, Nathan Lyon and his issues, Usman Khawaja and his issues. Steve Smith missed the Test, and yet England are probably going to lose 4-1, which really sums it up in terms of blown opportunities. We touched on Bethell, though, and him coming into the series late. What about Beau Webster? Unbelievable. 71 not. I mean, not unbelievable when you consider his Test career to date. But he's now averaging 41 with a bat in Test cricket and 22 with the ball, 71 not out and 3 wickets. And Crash, have they missed a trick by not picking him earlier, or have they just played it right and they brought him in when they've needed him?
Yeah, I think the intensity of this Test isn't what the first ones were. I mean, you cannot compare this deck to the first Test in Perth. He's come in at the right time, but you got to give him credit. I love these old-style Sheffield Shield players who've played a million games, and they just get it. You want some overs of off-spin? Yeah, I got some. You know, you want a bit of rear-end runs? Yeah, I got some. You know, he's just Has he moved past Cameron Green, Dan? That's the big thing. If there was a sixth test and one position open, who gets it? Is it Green or is it Webster?
That's a great question. I'm
saying Webster.
The cop-out answer is that I think, realistically, if there was a sixth test, Usman Khawaja wouldn't play it and they would both play it.
Yeah.
I think that's the likely outcome, and they would play either a frontline spinner or an extra quick. And I think, realistically, in the medium term, there's probably room for both because, as I said, Khawaja is vacating it. Oh, look, you still ask the experts. We spoke both to David Warner and Michael Vaughan today, myself and Ben Horn. We spoke to them, and they both seem to prefer Green still. Certainly David Warner did, and Vaughan said there's no real qualms about Green and his batting, that he's had starts. He's blown it a few times, which is probably right. But, gee, Webster's numbers are a lot better than Green's, really. I mean, to be frank, in terms of averages. I think the biggest misstep of the selectors all summer, and it hasn't really cost them, was picking Josh Inglis ahead of Webster in Brisbane and Adelaide. I think that's what you look back at that, and they're probably too clever by half. Oh, Inglis at 7 as a specialist batter. Yeah, when you have Webster, who's such an accomplished 6 and 7 in Test cricket, who makes runs, pretty much everywhere he goes. Maybe he's not a front line, maybe he's not really a fourth, fifth bowler, but I think he's good enough to hold down a 7 in Test cricket. Yeah. So I think when you look forward to they've got through, they won this series. Regardless of whether Green or Webster played, you look through to the next 18 months, they've got 26 tests coming up from next August. I think there's room for both of them, Crash, and I think they both have significant roles to play, but Green's going to have to improve. What about Usman Khawaja? His final day of Test cricket. Do you expect you'll get a bat, and what is a reasonable target for England to set Australia?
I would say a bare minimum where it gets interesting would be 180. I think anything less than that, without a spin bowler, and the deck's still playing pretty well, you'd be struggling. They've got Webster batting down at number 9. So, I mean, goodness me, they've got batting. But you just never know. I was here when Fani de Villiers, the South African, bowled Australia out for 111 with skidding medium pace on a deck which was not totally unlike this. So it can happen. But I just feel that anything beneath 170, there'll be anxious moments. I'll lose a couple of decks. But Usman Khawaja tomorrow, he said, no, don't bother. Don't put me I don't want the fairy tale up the top of the order. I'm happy to bat where I am. But I don't know. That's open to debate. They may look. Hey, if they lose their second wicket with 20 runs to go, I know who's coming to the crease, and his last name starts with a K.
And it's not Michael Klinger. I'm trying to think of someone who starts with it. There's no subs card. I don't think Maxi Klinger's making a comeback in his mid-40s. Now, the interesting thing, Crash, you touched on Usman Khawaja and him making comments. Where he made those comments is actually the story of the day, arguably. He made them on the ABC, which we touched on 24 hours ago in a post-play video. And what a saga it's been. We both mentioned the Streisand effect and Cricket Australia making too big a deal, ultimately Stuart Clark's comments, which were inflammatory, and about George Bailey and James Allsop, the head of cricket. And anyway, we've gone through that narrative. What have you made of the way the last 48 hours have panned out on that front?
Well, of course, the ABC were banned from having an interview yesterday at Stumps after Clark strongly criticised them. I didn't like it at all. I think prohibition in life never works, particularly with the media. You only make a small story bigger. They wanted that story to go away, and the big thing was, and this is the big thing, Todd Greenberg addressed it early in the day. He stood up for Allsop, he stood up for Bailey. Those stories were prominent on the CODE website, so they didn't have to go a step further. And here's the thing, by going a step further and banning the ABC from an interview, that became the big story, and Greenberg's comments got pushed down. So I didn't like it at all. I thought Stuart Clark went a bit hard, but hey, that's life in the big city. There was no censorship of Channel 7 when Matty Hayden went very hard on, who was it earlier this season?
Michael Divenuto.
Michael Divenuto, the batting coach. So, yeah, I didn't like it. Dan, did you?
No, I think it was... No, I don't like it. Look, as a journalist, I don't like censorship and prohibition, so as you touched on. So, no, philosophically, I don't like it. And I think I agree with you. Like, while I get where they were coming from, I think fundamentally they've sort of cut their nose to spite their face.
Yeah.
It's not been a... Yeah, there was a better way to go about it, as you touched on. It amplified an issue which didn't need to be amplified for them. Like we discussed this last night, but Mitchell Starc took one more front-up wicket, and I suppose there's a chance for him to take a couple more tomorrow, potentially with the second new ball. But as it stands today, because we'll give you one last crack at it, Travis Head, I suppose, could get back tomorrow. Who's in front for player of the series?
I've got Starc in front, just by this much of Travis Head, only because I just felt those first two tests, if you win the first two tests, you ain't losing anything in an Ashes series. And Starc took 10 in the first and 8 in the second. There were pockets of that Australian team in disarray. I know Travis was fabulous, centuries in tests 1, 3 and 5. But I just felt that without Starc, they just would have been completely lost in this series. Have you got him in front?
Yes, I do. Actually. I agree. I think ultimately it's that, shop early and avoid the rush. And I think you got to give extra credit to those who performed in the first couple of tests, including his runs. One final mention I want to make, though, because he slipped under the radar this series, but this has been a series that's been a triumph for Scott Boland. Taken 20 wickets for the series. He's played all 5 tests as a 36-year-old. Well, 37 in April crash. He's had injuries. He's never played 5 tests in the series before, and his career could have been ended by Bazball 2 years ago. And he has tamed them 20 wickets at 25. He's been an Iron Man, much like Mitchell Starc. He's been he's been the Robin to Mitchell Starc's Batman, and a very able one at that.
And the best compliments come from the opposition, and sometimes they're delivered in really subtle ways. And Jacob Bethell today said, when I was getting towards 100 and they put the spinners on, I thought, thank goodness it wasn't Scott Boland, because he just puts it there. And they were simple words, but they said so much. You could just see this young kid when he's facing Boland going, not again, not again, not again. So high praise, deserved praise. I'm glad you mentioned him, an unsung hero. Well said.
Well, he's a Victorian, so I've got to mention him. Anyway, we'll talk about, maybe talk about him tomorrow. Maybe I don't think you'll open the batting. Anyway, I look forward to bringing it all to you tomorrow for what will be our final show of the series.